Evening. Cell phones on vibrate, please, or off. I'd like to welcome everybody. Today is February 8th, 2016. It's 7 p.m. We're in the Cardinal Room. This is the legislative meeting for the School District of Upper Dublin Board of School Directors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome back Emily, who I believe missed last month because all the crazy things, so I'd like to honor her again by asking her to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everybody please rise?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Bray, roll call, please.
Mr. Shumalewski. Mrs. Good.
Here.
Mrs. Hester.
Here.
Dr. Ludwig.
Here.
Reverend Kim.
Here.
Mrs. Rothman.
Here.
Dr. Resnick.
Here.
Mr. Sirota.
Here.
Dr. Levinowitz.
Here.
All present. Thank you.
Okay. We are missing our assistant secretary tonight, and we have Miss Letter sitting in. Welcome, Susan. Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody. Let's move right on to the student government report. And Emily, it's good to see you again in your chair.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. The Upper Dublin students have just finished course selection for the 2016-2017 school year and have entered into the third marking period. Both our boys and girls basketball teams have made it to the playoffs, with the girls maintaining an undefeated record and #1 standing in the league. Come support these athletes. The boys team faces Abington this Friday night. Also this past weekend, the varsity cheerleaders participated in the UCA National High School Cheerleading Championship in Orlando, Florida, which was broadcasted on ESPN. We are so proud of our cheerleaders and their performance at such a large competitive level. The Student Government Association has been selling flowergrams, carnations that can be delivered to other students for Valentine's Day in homeroom on Thursday, February 11th. A new concept implemented this year are singing grams, where students can pay $5 for performers to serenade a person of their choice. All money raised will be donated to Meals on Wheels. Also, SGA will be hosting its annual volleyball marathon, which begins on Friday, February 19th at 11 p.m. and continues until 5 a.m. on Saturday, the 20th. Student teams are required to raise at least $300, and all proceeds go to the Travis Manian Foundation. Another charitable endeavor is the Valentine's Day surveys, sponsored by the National Honor Society. All UDHS students answered a series of questions in homeroom to indicate qualities about themselves. Students can pay $1 to see their matches throughout the school, and all the money goes to the ASPCA. In performing arts, theater students have begun rehearsals for The Little Mermaid, this year's all-school musical, and musicians are preparing for the Music in Our Schools concerts, which will be the first week of March. Finally, congratulations to Max Halperin and Luda Grodinsky, who will both represent UD at the Regional Choir Competition, which will actually be hosted here at our Performing Arts Center in later in March. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Wheeler.
Thank you. I would first like to update the board following our debriefing after the recent snowfall, which I think appropriately was classified by some as a blizzard. A sincere and hearty thank you to our facilities, grounds, and custodial staff. They were superb. They worked long, hard hours to get our parking lots and our sidewalks back in shape following the storm. Excuse me. There were several general issues that we addressed. One particularly was the sidewalks along the main roads that fronted some of our property. Because there was so much snow, the street plowing resulted in several additional feet of snow being put on our sidewalks in addition to the initial 2 feet. That did cause some problems in removal and some slow removal at a few of the schools. There were specific issues. One was equipment failure we found at Sandy Run and at Fitz. We did have some key pieces of equipment that malfunctioned, and we will be talking with our facilities committee in the future about how we're going to move forward to make sure that, although we know that these storms don't happen all that often, we want to make sure that we are being proactively prepared. At Fitz, that is the smallest footprint of our property. With so much snow, we simply had nowhere to put the snow. So that took the longest time to clear the parking lots and to clear the sidewalks. At Fort, the location of the playgrounds makes it rather difficult to access for snow blowing. So it took a few days longer than we had hoped to get those playgrounds up and running. But we prevailed, and in the end, and with the good warmer weather, et cetera, it's amazing how quickly 2 feet of snow sort of evaporated. So we've learned some lessons, and we will be talking with the various committees about how we will be planful in the event that, or when the day comes, because we know it will, that we have another storm of that impact. Again, thank you to our students, parents, and faculty who really helped us get through this as we address this unusual event. Secondly, I am very pleased to, not to announce, because it has been announced, and I think a lot of people have already begun to experience it, but our new website was launched on Friday successfully. Today, Phil and his department spent the day refining that. They are coordinating with our hosting company to optimize the configuration and hopefully increase the speed. Some folks may have noted today and over the weekend that it took a while to load, particularly the pictures. We're aware of this. Thank you to those who notified us of missing information and broken links. Those have all been addressed. And please note that some items that you may be looking for on the website may appear in different places on the new website. So get in there, explore. The link with the hack is up and running. That was a concern for some folks. So we are welcoming any questions or suggestions that the community may have, and you can directly email Phil with those. So with that, I would like to move into my presentation. I'm very pleased to be able to present a mid-year review of the goals that the board and I established for the current school year. So we're going to go through the 4 goals, the overarching goals, and I want to bring the board up to date on where we are with making progress toward accomplishing the goals that we set. And as always, the work that we are doing is framed in the vision that all Upper Dublin students can and will learn with equitable opportunities. This vision meshes very closely with the mission of the school district, which is to provide a safe environment in which all students are respected, educated, encouraged, and challenged to become lifelong learners within a global society. So those 2 documents form the framework of the work that we are doing. The first goal, excellence and equity for all, is to increase achievement for all students and subgroups as measured by standardized test results, internal benchmarks, and course summative assessments. So we are doing this in several ways. Our data review at both the district and school levels is underway. It has been since the beginning of the school year, and we are using the analysis of those data to leverage our decisions related to curriculum, instruction, assessment, and professional development. We are not operating in isolation. Everything is being linked together based on the data. One of the questions that we may have is, which data are we using to make those decisions? This is just an overview of some of the instruments that we are using. At the K-5 level, of course, the results of the PSSA are very important. We know the waters were muddied a bit last spring with the change in the test and the realignment of the cut scores by which student success is measured, but we do find that those data are important as we drill down into the student and the school level. We use the DIBBLES, and this is an acronym that stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. A real mouthful. The 3 key words there to focus on are basic literacy skills. This is the instrument that our primary teachers are using to screen youngsters when they arrive in kindergarten and to keep a very close watch on those who by their performance on that instrument, indicate that they may need a little bit more support as they master and acquire the skills of reading and writing. So that is a baseline in kindergarten and then used in the primary levels. CDTs you may have heard about. That is the Classroom Diagnostic Tool. This comes to us from the State Department of Ed. It is an online adaptive test. It is somewhat aligned to the PSSA in that it gives us a snapshot of where a student is achieving related to the content and skills measured by the PSSA. However, it is not a predictor of how students do on that. We are continuing to review our use of this instrument. Our curriculum department is engaged in a review, taking a look at what possible alignment we might be able to pull out between our PSSA results and the CDT results. So we will be making a decision moving forward. Are we going to continue to use that instrument or not? And of course, as we are developing and writing and implementing new curriculum, an ongoing process, we are focusing closely on curriculum-embedded assessments as much as on the content and skills. When we map backward, the first thing we do is determine what we want students to know. The second thing is to determine what assessments are we going to embed in that curriculum to make sure that we are measuring what we want, and then we go back and we write the units. K-12, of course, the keystones. You may be aware that the governor recently signed Senate Bill 880, which has delayed implementation of the keystones by 2 years as a graduation requirement. However, there still are some questions about what is that going to do with the related mandates that we provide remediation for students who are not doing well on those. We are still waiting for guidance from the PDE on that question. Again, we use our CDTs. As we are building curriculum, we are building in quarterly common assessments. Those now appear in some of our areas of curriculum, not all. We are implementing at the 9th grade level benchmark common assessments, and these are assessments that we have specially designed that will be administered this spring in our level 2 and honors courses. Those data, that information will serve as a baseline. Next year, after we've worked through the first year of the reducing of the tracks at the high school, we will again test that year's 9th grade students. We know that apples to oranges doesn't work as far as evaluating individual student success, but we believe that that will give us some indicators of how well we are maintaining the rigor of what are now our level 2 and honors courses. We are implementing, as I said, the restructuring of English language arts, science, and social studies classes for 9th grade. We will be doing this in next year, piloting with 9th grade. The following year, it is our plan to move this ahead into 10th grade. We will certainly be looking at the lessons learned next year as we make our plans for 10th grade. So this, although we are counting this as real progress toward our goal, we realize that this is going to be an ongoing initiative. We do have supports for this built into the budget proposal for the 16-17 budget. We are planning to increase our co-teaching, our professional development, which has focused for a year and a half now on implementing formative assessment, flexible grouping, etc., tied to the restructuring. In the last 2 months, we have identified a cadre of teachers at the high school, and they are immersed in some very specific training at MCIU on co-teaching, and that has become a real focus of our professional development. We are increasing our opportunities for academic and behavioral support. And again, our professional development has focused, as we have said many times, on formative feedback, differentiated instruction, flexible grouping, and we have added the co-teaching. We have made some significant strides ahead in the recommendation system for placement of students in the next grade or the next school. We're making database decisions. We worked specifically last spring looking at recommendations for students moving from 5th grade to 6th grade. We are beginning to look at the process for students moving from 8th to 9th grade. We have worked with the Against Educational Advice, the AEA format or system. We listened closely to what parents and students brought to our attention, and we acted accordingly. Let me go back. We have revised the form. The form is now more user-friendly, and the form is now available through a hyperlink that has been embedded in our program of studies. So that is freely available to parents and students. We have engaged in a review of our gifted program. We have a committee of multiple stakeholders. That committee work is underway. They are currently addressing a needs assessment here in the district. We anticipate roughly that this will conclude in the fall, but it is somewhat open-ended. That is a tentative ending date. We want to make sure that the work that we are doing is the right work. We want to make sure that we are enhancing our system in a way that meets the needs of all of our students, parents, and faculty. We are also engaged in a review of our district hiring practices. This was the outcome of the work that we're doing in one of our equity and excellence committees, and I'll speak to that in a few minutes. Currently, we are engaged in an analysis of our current policies and our current practices around hiring here in the district. We are standardizing the way our buildings and our departments approach the process of hiring. And we are anticipating improvements to our practice this spring. Mr. Sigafus is heading up this work, and we're optimistic that we will be in a position to start to enact these improvements this spring. Our curriculum upgrades continues. Our curriculum is being aligned to standards. That is ongoing work. Our educator evaluation system is now fully implemented. We are using educator student learning objectives, or SLOs, that are explicitly aligned with school and department goals. And for the first time this year, it's not only our teachers who have student learning objectives that are part of their evaluation process. We are piloting for the first year SLOs aligned with school and department goals for our principals and for the directors of each of our departments. Our professional learning is now more job embedded than ever, and that means rather than stand alone, go to a particular building or classroom, listen to training about a topic, and then leave, we're working more and more with enabling our teachers to use their new learning right within the work that they're doing every day. One example of this is our Google applications for education. As we moved into the world of Google and we initiated the technology rollout of devices for all of our students, our teachers faced a relatively steep learning curve, but we were able to embed that training in other professional development that we have been doing. And I have to say, our faculty has been tremendous in their response to this. And we are moving ahead very, very quickly. And I tip my hat to Phil and his department, to our curriculum office, and to our teachers who have really embraced this. And speaking of devices, our Chromebook one-to-one, we now have conducted our Bright Bites survey. We are analyzing the results of that. We are using those analysis and those data to really document the integration of what we call the 4 C's throughout our curricula. These are critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. Those soft skills that we believe will be part of the learning for our students as they use these. We're using a model, the SAMR model, which is a sort of a Bloom's taxonomy for technology integration, in which we're moving from just substituting, using the Chromebooks to substitute the pen and paper that we used to use for note-taking, through augmentation, modification, and finally redefining how we are delivering our curriculum and how we are instructing through the use of these devices. So we feel that we are being very successful. The work's underway, but a tremendous amount of progress has been made in this area. Our Excellence and Equity Steering Committee has sponsored several significant school and community events. Specifically, the African American Students and Parents Committee was very integral in planning our Martin Luther King Day of Service activities on January 18th. Additionally, our faith-based Students and Family Committee played a key role in that occurring. Holocaust remembrance activities, those are scheduled at the high school in April and at the middle school in May. Those are the outcome of the work of our Excellence and Equity Committees. We are going to be sponsoring our second Asian Parents Night, again the work of our Asian American Students and Parents Committee. That will occur on April 5th. And finally, we recently had in this room our annual Connections Family Dinner. And although the turnout was relatively small this year, we had a dynamic program. Judge Stephen Tolliver of the 38th Judicial District was here and spoke very movingly to the students who were here, and it was a source of real inspiration. So quite a few things have occurred in moving toward achieving that first goal of excellence and equity. We then move to our second overall goal, which is aligning our expenditures with revenues, as evidenced by the completion of the current fiscal year within our adopted budget of $90 million plus, with no less than $2 million, just in excess of $2 million in our ending fund balance, and updating our projections, models, and long-range planning for improving the fiscal condition of the district. Our budget process has purposefully become increasingly proactive and transparent. The feedback that we've had from folks is that they are pleased. We know that we have a great deal of work to do, but we have made great strides in meeting that expectation. We've held, Ms. Bray and I had, 18 meetings with various budget writers and people who are responsible for different parts of our budget to help garner information from them and to ensure that they fully understand what is going into the budget proposal. Our curriculum summit in October was very successful, and we were able within a few hours on each of 2 days to garner insights from our curriculum content coordinators, specifically looking at what they anticipated their needs would be for the budget and overall conversation about moving forward, where their department would be going over the course of the next year. We are emphasizing identifying efficiencies in this budget proposal. One of the areas that I can specifically point to goes right back to our website development and maintenance. We are going from a bill of about $18,000 to a bill of probably about $500 by moving that internally and using our internal expertise and capacity to develop and maintain the website. It is anticipated that we are going to be reorganizing our technology department, and we believe that we will be able to get to a point where it meets our needs in a more cost-efficient measure. Our cabinet is reviewing the recommendations of the 2011 Financial Task Force. My predecessor led that task force. There is a series of recommendations. We are now revisiting that, going through and seeing what has continued applicability for the work that we're doing moving forward. We have worked to improve our bond ratings and our capital reserves to position the district for facilities work and other contingencies moving forward. Our bond refunding realized a total savings of $1.7 million over the next several years, and Ms. Bray, we thank you for the work that you did with that. Our Finance Committee is working on, focusing on long-term planning, and we've been reviewing a lot of our financials, and I will circle back to this in just a moment when we look toward the future. We are also having quarterly meetings with the UDEA, our teachers bargaining group, to communicate the district's fiscal position to make sure that all of our stakeholders are well aware of exactly where we are. In facilities, our overarching goal to prioritize required preventative maintenance improvements and renovations for school buildings, as evidenced by development and implementation of timelines for identified projects. We have done a bit of work toward this. We are actively developing priorities and timelines through short-term and long-range planning. Any of you who have joined us at the district's facilities committee meetings knows that working with Mr. Gerdeman, we have updated our list of what needs to be done and engaged in prioritizing those projects. We also are focusing more on our preventative maintenance. So we are, in brief, we are aligning the work of both the facilities and finance committees to establish action steps and timelines for funding future building improvement projects. Again, we have a renewed emphasis on preventative maintenance. Since I arrived in the district just over 18 months ago, one of the things I've heard is concerns that we have a relatively new building here, and yet we have issues. Part of the problem has been an inability to budget fully in the area of preventative maintenance. We haven't let our facilities go, but we are now focusing on increasing that preventative maintenance. We are investigating cooling availability at our elementary and middle schools. We are addressing projects that have been on the books for quite some time. Two specifically that are of financial significance are the electrical system at Thomas Fitz and the boilers that have to be replaced at Fort Washington. We have revitalized the Grade Alignment Task Force to inform planning for future improvements at Sandy Run. And I do want to emphasize, I think there's some confusion, and I will take the responsibility for that, in what exactly the charge is to this task force. This is a committee to complete the development of recommendations on grade alignment, and specifically because of the work of the first task force, it became narrowed down to what will happen with sixth grade. So the work of this group is really focusing on where would the community like to have sixth grade remain at a future middle school or move to perhaps the elementary level. We continue that work, and we have several more meetings scheduled before we will have a community forum and make a recommendation to the board. Again, I want to emphasize there is no timeline for the beginning of any project at Sandy Run Middle School, and this task force will not be recommending specifications for a future school. This is to begin the process of thinking about what that may be when the time comes for where we would like sixth grade to be located. The final and fourth bullet, overarching goal for this year, is to enhance and expand district communication to our community, as evidenced through materials published through traditional and social media. We have, as you know, we have restructured the board committee meeting format to improve our visibility and our transparency. 4 board committee meetings meet monthly in open meetings. Agendas and minutes are posted on the district website. Everyone is encouraged to join us. There is time for the public in each of those meetings. Again, our new district website has been launched successfully. We have had to date 2 district, what we are calling combined leadership meetings. And these are the leaderships of the PTOs, the PTAs, and SPEAK. We've met twice. We have a 3rd meeting scheduled for the end of I believe it's in May. And we have found that this has proven to be an excellent format for both sharing information from the district to these very active and supportive parent groups, and also allowing them a forum in which they can easily share information among themselves and feedback information to us. We have increased our focused use of social media, Twitter, Facebook, and we have developed and we are implementing our district communications plan. We have produced an annual report. We have produced the first of 2 annual newsletters, and we believe that the first newsletter will be issued shortly. And we produced a realtor's brochure that is available in real estate agents down at the Township Building to inform people who might be interested in moving into Upper Dublin of what a fine school district we have and what we have to offer. So projecting forward, very briefly, these are not setting goals for next year. That will occur at the end of the year and then over the summer. But I do want to inform the public that the board is planning to initiate a formal 5-year planning process in the fall. The former, what was known as the strategic plan, expired a year and a half ago, and we believe that we now have things in place so that we can move forward and focus our attention on some formal long-term planning. We will be implementing a new English language arts program, K-12, in the fall. Again, we have a very active study group working on that and looking at various options. We will be monitoring for the rest of this year and into next year our restructuring initiative at 9th grade. Specifically, as I said earlier, we will be administering benchmark common assessments this spring. They will serve as a baseline moving forward. The Keystone exam results will continue to be analyzed closely. We will be able to drill down into the performance of individual students. And we are potentially going to pilot the measure of academic progress instrument as a benchmark evaluation or assessment system. This is another adaptive program that would look at each student's learning level. It would be applicable with grades 2 through 12. It's something that we're thinking of as we are doing, as I said earlier, our review of the use of the CDTs moving forward. So that will be information we are imagining will come to the Education Committee within the next few months. So with that, that is a review. We are making marked progress toward accomplishing each of the goals that the board and I developed last fall. We're very proud of the work that we are doing. We are moving forward purposefully in many, many areas, and we appreciate the support of the board in allowing us to do this work. Are there any questions, concerns?
Questions from the board at this time? Okay, I don't see any. I think, in summary, I think for me, I just read on PDE's website, they released the information on looking at 650 high schools, highest SAT scores for 2015, and we are tied 14. So out of 650 high schools, we are 14th for SATs. So I just want to congratulate the school, our district and the high school, and I think that talks significantly about what we're trying to accomplish in terms of, moving forward in curriculum, and I think I was very excited to read that.
Absolutely, and I think we have to recognize that it's important work that's happening at the high school, but it's also important work that is happening from kindergarten on up. All of that feeds into the success, ultimately, of our students at the high school level.
Right, and thank you, Emily, for being part of that.
Yes.
Okay, no comments or questions? Okay, thank you, and I think this is something we spoke about last year in terms of putting out goals, releasing goals, putting them on the website, but the community insisted that they wanted to see more than just the goals. They want to see progress. They want to see what each goal, how it breaks down into the various objectives. And I think I'm very pleased to see that Dr. Wheeler has moved forward to break down where we are right now. And I think we're making a great deal of progress. And I look forward to the review at the end of the year. And also coming out with our goals and objectives for next year. Dr. Ludwig?
Will this review be posted on the website?
It will. It will be posted on the website. I will be working with Phil to develop a narrated PowerPoint so that folks who were not able to be here this evening or to view it on television will get a little bit of the background detail, so they will not just be looking at the PowerPoint in isolation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our second presentation is will be our business administrator, Ms. Brenda Jones-Bray, and this is an update to the 2016-17 preliminary budget update. I just wanted to, Ms. Bray, is tomorrow the governor's budget address for next year?
Oh, I was just going to say which year.
Yeah.
Yes,
Pick
it
a
is,
year.
It is for 16-17.
16-17. So, and you can watch that if you have any interest. It is streamed live. I'm sure it's exciting. Okay. Again, I urge the community, Ms. Bray will give an update tonight, but there's a lot more that is covered at our Finance Committee meeting. So I urge the community, if you're interested in finding out, much greater detail than tonight, we will discuss a lot of these items during the Finance Committee meeting, February 18th, February 18th.
At 6 o'clock.
6 p.m.
And tonight's update is a little bit different. Typically, we go over changes that have happened and perhaps have changes that have already been implemented or taken into the budget. Tonight, we're just going to talk about some good guys that have happened, and I'll end with speaking about the 2 state budgets that we're still concerned about. But just some different options and discussions. But as always, I want to go back to the timeline just briefly. February 2nd, we filed for the exceptions with PDE, for PESers. Now we will wait because PDE has to notify us by March 2nd as to if we're approved. A little bit more about that. Again, retirement. The total amount was $692,796. That's a bit more than what we had factored into the equation because you may recall the PESers made a sudden change. They actually increased the rate for 2016-17. So when we went through and did the calculations, we had to use the amounts there. That doesn't make a change. As notes in the last point, the amount approved by PDE does not determine the real estate tax increase or change to the real estate percentage. We're not eligible for special education and for the 16-17 year. Components again, one more time, Act 1, 2.4, that's the index. The PESers exception that we've talked about and what's baked into the budget is 0.89% for right now in the preliminary budget. There's 2 more votes to go of 3.29%. Something that I hadn't experienced since I'd been in Upper Dublin occurred recently with the property at 1716 Dreshertown Road. This is one of those good guys, one of those positive things that, of course, I could never budget for because I don't have a really great crystal ball. But when that 37.63 acres of farmland was sold for development, it changed. It went from what's called Act 319 to Act 515, I believe. And that permits us to have what's called rollback taxes and interest for the past 6 years. It's a substantial amount of money, and I'll be getting into that. And then on top of that, the money from the past years, we issue an interim bill for the change of assessment for the current year. And again, we'll be going over the dollar amounts, but it's one-time revenue. And Dr. Wheeler was speaking earlier about a number of projects and things that we want to do this summer. In fact, we have a summer project list of approximately $2 million. So one-time revenue is often a great way to fund capital projects. More discussion later on, and certainly will be discussed at the
1760 is the Rose Garden, Zeiger's property? That they're moving in?
Yes.
Making a lot of progress there?
Yes, they are.
For phase 1?
Well, but that's phase 1. However, that revenue that comes in when those homes eventually sell will be a recurring annual amount that we can budget for and plan on each year. Okay, if you look at the Treasurer's report this evening, you'll notice that our real estate transfer tax appears to be over the moon for this time of year. And for the last couple of years, we've had some significant sales for properties in the Fort Washington Office Park. And in 15-16 to date, well, actually through January 31st, we have seen these properties sold and those amounts of money resulting from the transfer of those properties. And then we also had, notice, real estate transfer tax, additional one-time revenue received in 15-16. Now, this is information I just learned about last week when the transfer tax report came in. Notice 200 Dryden Road, our 0.5% equals $173,750. And yes, that is not a mistake up there. The address for one of the Prudential's properties is called 0, Dreshertown Road, so that is the address. And those 3 parcels, those 3 Prudential parcels that are going to be, again, built upon, I believe, age 55 housing, generated $20,000 apiece of one-time, again, transfer revenue. So let's really look at the numbers. The rollback taxes that we've collected so far to date, $121,000, but there's more. The $121,000 came from settlement. There's about $48,000 that I'm fighting for or quibbling or however engaging with a company that collects for Montgomery County. So we should receive about another $48,000 for back taxes and interest. And if we don't receive it fairly quickly, I imagine I'll be talking with our solicitor to put in a request for that. And then there's also the interim taxes for the current year that's not registered, reflected on this schedule. Again, the transfer tax for the Fort Washington Office Park property is about $255,000, and the transfer tax for the Dreshertown area about $263,000, for a total of $640,000 of what I keep repeating is one-time revenue. This is not money that we'll be able to build into the budget. We can't bill for it every year, and so we may want to consider transferring it to a debt service or a capital reserve instead of letting it fall to fund balance. Bond refunding results. We really have pretty much discussed the November sale and how it ended up playing out. But I wanted to call everyone's attention again. Total savings is $700,000 over the remaining life of the issue. The greatest savings is in 2016-17. That was $500,000. That's a permanent reduction, and that has been reflected in the preliminary budget that the board passed. So that is savings that reduced the current budget under consideration and will reduce future budgets. The second second bond refunding that sold on January 20th and will settle on February 22nd, $9.8 million. Mr. Lillis was here at our Finance Committee meeting in January and talked about the savings of $1 million over the life of the issue, and he also explained exactly how the financial world came together to really make our bonds particularly attractive, and part of that financial world has to do with maybe the state bonds not being as attractive as far as tax-exempt bonds. Most of the savings over the next 4 years, but it's about $160,000 each year. For 2016-17, there's $167,000 that we have not yet taken out of next year's budget, and we will be discussing at Finance on February 18th. Tonight, everyone knows there's a motion on the agenda regarding the Aramark contract. The contract is to expire June 30th of 2016. It includes 6 positions in facilities and technology. It also includes supplies and equipment. That amount varies from year to year. The amount in the budget currently for 2016-17 is about $740,000. That is more than the current year. We reflected and put in about a 2.4% increase, being close to CPI because that is allowable in the contract. However, we want to evaluate the necessity of each position, and net change is to be determined. Health benefits, medical and prescription, second look. Medical came in, it increased from 17.3 to 18.4% for the medical piece. Prescription, it decreased from 2.4% to a minus 12%. Total increase with the first look, and now there actually has been some change in the number of lives in the covered by our insurance, so that's part of the reason, but it's not a major part. Total increase at first look, $991,170. Total increase for the second look is $730,000. The budget has not been changed yet to reflect that. And by the way, the difference between the 991 and the 730 is not only the district's savings, but it also reflects the amount that all the employees would share in too on their contributions. So we haven't yet at this point really split that out. So a look ahead. Transfer of one-time revenue, Aramark contract, budget savings from the second refunding, the refunding of 2016, medical and prescription. The third look, I'm not exactly sure when it's coming. Mr. Sigafus, can you?
I think we're tentatively looking at that in about 6 weeks. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sigafus and I will be having a conference with the district's medical consultants next week, or later this week actually, sorry, to discuss where we are and what some of those wide swings might mean. And then, as Dr. Levinowitz already stole my thunder, the governor's budgets. 15-16 approved. When will it be approved? And then the 16-17, which will be delivered tomorrow. Next week there will be a PASBO webinar, and we'll be looking very carefully at that. However, a great deal of information will be released tomorrow. So these are just the usual numbers. Audited financial, I think everyone knows that we ended the year at $6.3 million. Total revenue as the preliminary budget is $90 million. That's for this year. That doesn't include all of those good guys that I've talked about. Total expenditures, $91 million is the budgeted, the best estimate that we have at this point in time. Committed fund balance, just to remind everybody, that's $600,000 for the rate stabilization fund for medical, plus $960,000 for what we used to call HUB, but it's certainly set aside for assessment appeals, which we still have a number, ending fund balance of 3.2. And again, looking towards 16-17, numbers that you have all seen before, starting with that 3.4 again, total revenue for next year of $93 million, total expenditures of $95,879,000, with the projected ending fund balance, which I know is going to change, of $989,000. I would call your attention again to the total expenditure amount. I cannot go over this often enough, that total expenditure, because of what we have to do in school district accounting under GASB, we have to include the $1.458 million of transfer from the general fund to the capital reserve fund. So that's in there as well. Dr. Wheeler also mentioned that we're trying to give everyone more information, make things more transparent, and explain. So the board has before them, I don't know if I'd call it a detail, but a listing of functions. And you'll notice under the 1200s, there's a number of subcategories. There's information for the public that you can pick those up as well. And we will also be learning how to post such things to the website on our own, so that information is available to the public. Soon we'll have revenue information to be posted, and we're continuing to work on other functions as well.
That's it. Questions from the board? Mr. Sirota.
Do you know what percentage, the 991,000 from the second look on medical and RX, 991,000 roughly increase, what percentage roughly is that over the expenses from last year?
I don't have that on the top of my head. Let me try to look that up while we continue. Well,
Okay.
Mr. Sigafus may remember. Is it 6? Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, for both medical and prescription, it's an overall increase of 9.5%. So if you combine the two, it's a 9.5% increase,
Thank you.
which is better than our first look, which I think was, if memory serves, 12.7.
It was 12.4 or
Or
12.7.
Something like that, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Dr. Resnick.
Is there, am I on? Is there a point at which time we get a sense of how many homes would settle in that 1760 Dreshertown Road project? In other words, if a certain percentage of the first phase might settle this year, can we project a certain amount of revenue for next year?
We could certainly do that and bake that in and look at that, how, what has happened with our assessment over a number of years. But that is not a conservative budgeting technique unless we're very, very confident that those properties will settle. And the nice thing about the first year, though, is that you'll have the transfer tax as well as a partial year. Remember, when people move into a property, the first year there's an interim tax, which is they only pay the real estate tax for the time that they are living in the home. So we'd have to have some assumptions, but we can certainly have conversations about that at finance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, that concludes our presentations for the evening. At this time, I would like to open up the meeting to our first round of community input. You have 4 minutes. Kindly state your name, part of the township you reside in, and we will start with Ms. Brister.
Is it dark or is it night?
We'll
My eyes are not good.
we'll turn the lights back on now.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I asked this question last month, did not get an answer. I'm praying I'm going to get an answer tonight, or at least maybe in the next week. I asked how much debt, oh, sure, that'd be great. I have the old-fashioned hand notes. How much debt could the board finance without going to a referendum? And then Art, you said, well, you couldn't answer, it's a moving target, you don't know when. Let me clarify, I'm talking about within the current budget that we're looking at, which is next year's budget. Tonight, for example, we see 1.7 million in the savings for the bonds and some other one-time revenue that's going to be added to that. So if you want me to be more specific, if you wanted to use that money, which is now over 2 million, to finance debt, how much debt? And trust me, I'm not asking you to predict what the Federal Reserve is going to do. I just really want a ballpark figure, and it seems like important information that the board would need and that the task force might eventually need. So if we're not going to look at cost at all, then I can't even go there. Back to the goals. Dr. Wheeler, I agree, but I think I want to take it one step a little further, that there's some confusion with the purpose of the task force. And here's where I'm confused. It's inconsistent. The stated purpose is supposed to be to make a decision on 6th grade, I think. So at the last board meeting, Mark Sirota said that he thought the first step was, with the new information, change anybody's mind about moving 6th grade. And I thought that was great, because he's very concise. I kind of like that about him. I'm not like that. And it seemed like the rest of the board agreed. Like everybody was like, yeah, Mark, that's a good point. That's the first step. Would the new information change anybody's mind? Then a week later, those of us who were on the task force or attended, the facilitator, Mr. McConnell, asked, after a discussion of enrollment and capacity, and I'm well aware that we're not done just by looking at enrollment and capacity, but after that discussion, he asked the members of the task force, he said, and these are from my notes, is there a consensus? He said, it sounds like there's a consensus to keep 6th grade at the middle school. Is there a consensus to keep 6th grade at the middle school? The answer, in an informal way, so I can't say how everybody answered, but in an informal way, the answer was yes. That's our consensus at this time, keep 6th grade at the middle school. Then we go on, and Mr. Chmielewski, you didn't have time to follow up, and we didn't have time to ask you questions. But you said, we must keep grade realignment on the table for now, even if it means building rooms at the elementary schools. So that leads to confusion and inconsistency. And I understand totally that different board members could have different ideas. One board member might be thinking, they want to knock down the annex and they want a $60 million project at the middle school. Another board member might be thinking, no way, I'm going to support a realignment, but we don't know what you're thinking. So what is the purpose of the task force? If we basically were told, and I I hope at the next meeting, or maybe tonight, you'll have time to clarify what you mean, because I'm open to listening to options, but then it's not really fair to say to the task force, we want you to make a recommendation as to where to put sixth grade. But then Mr. Chmielewski's saying you can't take it off the table. You can't take a realignment off the table. So there's an inconsistency and a confusion that would lead me to believe that you don't really want the recommendation. And last but not least, I'm just going to speak for myself on this. I'm trying to make my decision on educational advantages and disadvantages. If that's what you want me to do, I can do that and I can make my case. But we don't have financial information. If you want me or anybody else to make decisions that include financial, you've got to start telling the public, well, what will it cost? What would it mean for a tax increase? What would scenario A, B, or C mean?
Okay, finish up, Nita, please.
I'm finished.
Okay, thank you very much.
Richard Petruski, Fort Washington. I have a few questions basically regarding the financial situation. First one is, we've only received half of our state funds to date. And I'd like to know what happens if the state budget impasse isn't solved and we don't get all of our funds. Where are we going to get the additional money that would replace that money? Secondly, our tax increase, as the presentation showed tonight, is still projected at 3.29%. But I listened to a lot of positives here, such as that $640,000 one-time revenue, plus a lower increase in the health benefit increase. And so I wonder if you're going to look at all of these factors and if we can therefore expect a lower tax increase than the 3.29%, because it sure looks like you've got a lot of positives. Another question is to have to do with the health benefits, and I'd like to know why the big increase in the health benefits, and if there is a way of decreasing this increase. And also I'd like to know who the consultant is that is doing this work. And maybe what you ought to do is look at a different consultant, because I think a tremendous increase like this ought to be able to decrease. And let's see, I've got a couple others. First of all, I heard the mention of you can get an annual report now. You can get real estate information on moving out and moving in. You didn't mention moving out, because I'm considering moving out. And also I heard I think it's called function description. I'd like to know where I can pick those up. I'd like to get those 3 reports. And one other thing, I heard this mention that our rating was 14th in the SATs out of 50. And you considered that good.
650, I said, Mr. Petruski.
Excuse me?
650.
Oh, I thought you said 50. I don't hear very well.
Excuse me?
That's better than I thought.
I hope so.
Jen Kuznets, Fort Washington. I just wanted to get a little clarification during the superintendent's report. We were talking about the purpose of the first task force and how they looked at all the grades and narrowed down that sixth grade is something we need to look further into, and that this new task force is looking into what to do with sixth grade. And I'm not sure that I understood that right, because I was at the last task force meetings, and it's always been what to do with sixth grade. It's never been anything else. It's been, where do we move it? Where do we stick it? What do we do with it? And so back then the catalyst was the building and the annex. And that was what we were looking at. And nobody wanted to put money into, or it seemed like we didn't want to put money into something that's probably not fixable. So with, that's the impression I had gotten the first go round. So now we're back, talking about the task force. And I just wanted to bring up that when we look at the engineering report, the annex needs about $4.3 million worth of repairs. The middle school needs $28 million worth of repairs. Fort Washington needs about $14 million. Maple Glen needs more than the annex. The annex is actually the cheapest building, technically, to fix, if we're talking about cost and the expense of fixing things. And that includes building a breezeway, soup to nuts, finishing the wood, putting new lockers in, the whole 9 yards is 4.3. So I guess my question is, why are we talking about moving sixth grade if the annex is the cheapest of our buildings to fix? seems like we should be having a different conversation. I know it's not because sixth grade is struggling and that academically we're trying to move it. That's never really been an issue. So I just wanted a little clarification about the purpose, again, of the task force.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Emery, Aeromark District Manager, and this is Jason Girdman.
Are you from the community, sir?
No, I'm not.
Mr. Roos?
Just so we're clear, the procedure is, this is community comments. It's for taxpayers and residents only.
Okay.
If you want to speak to the board, you'd have to make other arrangements to do that, but this isn't the time for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ginny Vitello, community member, and not moving, I swear. A more recent thing, I was going to bring it up at the education meeting, but I refrained because I just wanted to talk with more people about it. I'm starting to get concerned about the number of meetings and during school hour training for teachers that are then missing a day of school. So I'm wondering if there is a limit to how many days or how many hours a teacher can get pulled out for meetings or education during the school year, during kids' class time, because I feel like some of even the better of best teachers, because we have great teachers, are getting pulled out more because they're the ones who are actually really engaged and want to learn more about all our new curriculum and might be team leaders and everything else. And I wonder if there's a limit. And because I feel like the kids that are in school are getting substitutes. And not that I have anything wrong with substitutes. My mother was one for 20 years. But it's not the same. It just isn't. I had one idea that I floated to a couple people, and they thought it was great, was maybe instead of spending that money that we would be spending on a substitute anyway, maybe we could spend that on the teachers, and maybe they can do these meetings and learning times after school so that it's a win-win for everybody, that we're spending the same amount of money, the kids get their teacher all day, and they're getting their lessons and learning as they can. And then my other concern or question is, can Fort Washington please get new windows? I'm begging. It is one of the number 8 item. It's rated number 8 item in the Dewey Engineering Report. I know we have good guys. I don't want my taxes to raise. But the building, with a new boiler, new electrical things, the windows are horrible. We didn't get them a couple years ago when the other schools got them. And I was out there the other day, out back, and 3 of our 4 outtake vents are cardboard and duct tape, which, while I appreciate that whatever's being fixed is temporarily fixed, but this is not a long-term solution. And I know you mentioned 3M product, which I think is a great idea, but I want the 3M product on a new window, not on these old windows that were put in 1969. Thanks.
Any other community input? Okay, seeing none, we'll do our best to answer whatever we can. Ms. Brister, with how much debt can we finance without going to referendum, assuming what we will have, the money that we have is what we have right now. So all the savings, all the money we've put aside, if we use just that money, how much can we borrow approximately?
Actually, I've formally asked Ms. Doyle from PFM, our financial advisor, and we should, I plan to have her speak about that at March 1st. If you want me, would like, I could try to accelerate that and see if there is a table or something that we can use to make those determinations based upon what the interest rates are. At one point, the amount that I would like to focus on is 1.45 million.
That was what I was going to do.
Which is the debt fall off that we are planning on transferring, and that amount we can use to pay debt. And we have asked the question of Ms. Doyle and her colleagues, and that the amount that I had been reported in the past is around $22,500,000. That, of course, changes with interest rates. If I may continue just for a second, Mrs. Brister referred to a $1.7 million savings. That was over cumulative years. We don't have the $1.7 million to fund debt on for every year. We have maybe the 1.458 million plus $167,000 because that would be an annual amount that we can look at.
Right. Okay. Task Force. Dr. Wheeler?
Yes. The purpose is to advise the board, so the board will be looking for the recommendation. There is no preconceived notion on the part of the board. As far as the financials, that will be the subject of our March meeting, and I would anticipate that we would have the answer to that question that Ms. Brister asked. If not before then, we certainly would have it for that meeting. And our agenda that night will be addressing all of the financial questions. We had a lot of topics, and to bring everything into one meeting or two meetings, it seemed to make more sense to divide those and address different topics at different meetings. So March will be finances.
Okay. Mr. Chmielewski?
Okay, thank you. Because I was brought up in the community input, I think I should respond to some of this. As I stated in the task force meeting, first of all, the original task force 2 years ago, with some caveats, the principals stated that 6th grade could potentially fit into the elementary schools. At the last task force meeting, it was stated by the principals more that it's probably not possible for for 6th grade to fit in the elementary schools given the current configuration. So if you had 4 schools at K to 6, it's probably not possible to have that happen. I stated right from the beginning, I have no preconceived idea. I have no interest one way or the other how the outcome actually turns out. My interest is in making sure we frame out the issue properly from the task force to the board so that we're very clear as to what the recommendation could be. If we took 6th grade in the elementary schools off the table at that last meeting, we just cut a whole section of possible options that could be presented to the board out of the equation, and I was concerned about that. I stated that seems kind of obvious if you are going to look at putting 6th grade in the elementary schools, and if there's not enough room, then you either need to find room or build room. And if you're going to look to find room, one of the ways you can do that is, as we explored in the first task force meetings 2 years ago, is to split the schools K to 3, 4 through 6, some configuration like that, because then you get economies of scale because you have a given grades enrollment split by 2 instead of by 4, so then you have more uniform class size and potential to save classrooms and teachers at the elementary level, and that provides the space to possibly allow for 6th grade to fit in there. Now there's other considerations, cafeteria space and all of that, which would need to be looked at, but all I was trying to do is frame out what needs to be discussed and explored before an ultimate decision is made, whether it's by this task force or by the board. But ultimately, down the road a piece, whenever we get there, we'll all be there together. So my feeling is that we can hold hands and get there together, or we can cut short the process now, and then the board is going to have to do some other things, potentially unilaterally or with a different task force or something, in order to get there. So, I mean, my feeling has been for years is that you need to have community involvement in major decisions, and I get concerned if we're not going to explore all the avenues before we make recommendations. Those were my comments at the task force meeting, and that's, so I didn't change the complexion of the meetings or anything like that. It's just that I thought that pulling 6th grade out of the equation at last at the last task force meeting was way too soon. There has to be a lot more explored before we would get to that conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sirota?
I understand the confusion in the purpose of the task force, and perhaps one way to look at this, I don't think what Mr. Chmielewski is suggesting is incompatible with what I said. What I said was, and I think Mrs. Bristow characterized it exactly as I intended it, is that we did a lot of good work 2 years ago. I have no interest in doing that again, but we have new information. The question is, does the new information change anybody's mind? So, as Mrs. Bristow said, it's too soon to make that decision. We haven't reviewed all that information yet, but at the time we have, which will be according to the current agendas after the March meeting, if that hasn't changed anybody's mind, with all options still on the table, including the ones Mr. Chmielewski is suggesting, those are on the table until then. And so I don't think I don't think we're saying incompatible things here. So once we've reviewed all that information with all the options on the table, then we can ask, do we still believe now what we believed 2 years ago? And if the answer is yes, then we have one path to go on. If the answer is no, we have another path.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sirota. Anyone else regarding the Sandy Run Middle School restructuring? Okay, moving on to some other questions. Mr. Petrusky asked about the funds from the state. I mean, fortunately, we are one of the few districts in the state. There are many, many districts that have already borrowed to help them get through this very difficult situation that many districts are facing. But Ms. Bray, care to comment on if we don't get it all?
One of the things would be that we have additional money coming in the door through the good guys, so that would help fund. We also have some money in another debt service fund that we could pay bills and those type of, expenditures, payroll, whatever. Right now, we're projecting, even if we didn't receive any additional money, we could make it through the school year, through the fiscal year, and then once those, I hate to say it, but Upper Dublin, once those tax bills are issued, Upper Dublin folks are tremendous about paying their bills, and that would help us with the cash flow. I find it very difficult to consider that we will not have a budget for the current year passed by June 30th and that we haven't received the funds.
Right. There may not be a budget, but I think they will work something out to get another pot of money to the districts. Because, again, it's affecting many districts very differently than Upper Dublin.
Absolutely. Montgomery County has the largest number of .15 aid ratio schools in the Commonwealth. So what we're seeing in Montgomery County and Bucks County is very different than across the state.
Right. And if I look at the Treasurer's report correctly, we budgeted approximately $14.9 million.
Mm-hmm.
You asked the question, how much of that is going directly to the classrooms? I would think is that part of that $14.9 million, the state's PSERS?
Yes.
And a good amount of that.
Certainly. Things that just come to mind. PSERS, I believe, I'm working in 3 years all the time,
right.
But and part of the money that we received on January 2nd actually went back to for payment of receivables left over from the 14-15 school year. So there's a $2 million that has to do with the taxpayer property tax allocation. There's $2.5 million that's basic ed funding. There's $1.8 million that's special ed funding. So there are a number of components. The largest certainly is the reimbursement for PSERS.
For PSERS, right. Okay. The tax increase at this point is 3.29. Dr. Resnick, anything you want to add? I think Mr. Petrusky asked, where is the board, or what's the next step in terms of where the board will be at the end of this process, or how do we get to the end of the process in terms of the tax increase? And I think it might have been you at the last meeting that stated that, again, this is the maximum, and we will be talking at the next Finance Committee regarding if we reduce that total by X amount, how does that affect the recommendations from the administration? But I believe we have not taxed to that maximum amount for at least 4 or 5 years. Okay, we have not taxed to the max. I can show you that. So we can. My feeling is that, speaking as one board member, I will do my best to get that 3.29 down, and I believe we're on a downward trend in terms of our tax increases, and I would like to see that we continue that trend of reducing the total tax increase. Last year was 2.84. Okay, so I would like to look at something below 2.84. And some of the board spoke about that at some previous legislative meetings. Anyone else on that?
I'll just add,
Mr. Sorrell.
the actual question, I believe, was, will we look at all of these factors, the good guys and other positive information? Right. And absolutely, yes, we will look at all these factors.
Yep. I think there's some confusion about our health benefit process and a consultant working with us. The role of the consultant and how we determine that increase needs to be, I think, clarified. Whoa. Welcome, Troop 542. Am I right? Yeah, it's good to see you in the house. Okay.
There actually are two consultants, and Mr. Petruski, maybe this will help you out. The school district, several years ago, as most school districts have, independent consultants that look at our particular information that is coming from the consortium or from Independence Blue Cross, as it was before we joined the consortium. So that's one group. We're going to be meeting with them and perhaps have them come and speak to us about the trends and what's going on. Now I'm going to turn the mic over to Mr. Sigafus, who will discuss the other consultant.
Through the Healthcare Consortium, we're very fortunate to have the services of Aon Hewitt to serve as the consultant to the trust. So it's great to have an independent consultant as well, Gallagher, so that we really can try to navigate as efficiently and easily as we possibly can. One good point with being a part of the consortium is our buying power with the insurance companies has certainly increased. With about 12,000 employees in Bucks and Montgomery County, we're able to get rates that we would not be able to get on our own. But we're still self-funded through the consortium. So self-funding means our claims are our claims. We pay them, as opposed to being fully funded by a company when you buy a particular policy. But there are some really good news items that are taking place with the consortium that I have high hopes will get us an even better third look in this day and age with both prescription and medical often being in the double digits. It's great that we're down to a combined increase of only 9.5%. I say only, but it was, our first look was 12.9%. So there was a little bit of a variation where our first look looking at medical, and what's great about the consortium too is they're really looking back at a year and a half worth of medical information and trying to predict forward what our numbers and fees will really be. So our fees really come down to how much our employees are using those benefits. So there are wellness initiatives, for example, to help our employees stay as healthy as they possibly can, which ultimately reduces expenses for other procedures that are usually much more costly. But one of the other things that we've recently done is looked at changing the administrator of the program. As I said, we're self-funded, and our plans are our plans as they are specified in the contracts with our employee groups. But the administrator of the plan can often save us on administrative costs or work out other benefits. So we'll be actually switching from Independence Blue Cross come July 1, and the medical administrator will actually be Aetna, and the RX administrator will switch from Independence Blue Cross or Express Scripts to CVS Health. So while they'll be, handling our plans, there are some additional savings that I think we'll definitely see, which the second look tries to take into account. But since we're moving from Independence Blue Cross to those two new companies, the crystal ball is a little bit murkier to know exactly how it's going to play out. So that's why working with Gallagher in Aon will help us to come up with the best estimate that we have, going forward. Additionally, I think there's some other concessions that were made in the last negotiations with our professional staff and support staff, as well as our administrators and other employee groups, where our employees are contributing a greater percentage towards their health plan. So depending on the health plan that they choose, teachers groups, for example, will be looking at contributing 15 to 16%, raising at least a whole percentage point towards the employee contribution. Similarly, our support staff is making the same sort of concession, as well as the administrators and the other groups. But also in our support staff, one of the provisions in our new contract is new employees coming on board will only be eligible for employee-only benefits to have a district contribution. So they may purchase an employee and spouse or employee and family, but they pick up 100% of the difference. So while it may not help maybe our health experience, it will certainly help to offset our expenses as we have more and more new employees coming on board with our support staff. The expense of the district will be lightened as a result of that. So there's some things still in motion a little bit. I think that will hopefully result in a even better third look is our hope. But being a part of the consortium, though, and being self-funded, our expenses turn out to be our expenses, and that's sort of characteristic of being self-funded.
Okay, there was a question, there's a sheet in the back that does break down the function codes. It's the two-page sheet is what I think Ms. Bray was referring to. That was in the back. There was,
The other two documents could be picked up at central office.
okay, the other two documents, which,
The Realtor brochure
Realtor brochure.
is available either at the Township Building, or you can certainly stop by our offices, and the newsletter will be available in both places as well once it's published.
okay, there was, Ms. Patella asked a question regarding the number of professional development or meetings that our teachers are having during the day. Ms. Morrison.
Thank you for your question. There are so many reasons why teachers are pulled out of class, and that might be for a half a day in the curriculum office for professional development. It might be for other kinds of training through other offices besides the curriculum office. So it's a little bit difficult to fully answer your question, but what I could say on behalf of curriculum, we are keenly aware that teachers should stay in the classroom as much as possible, and that's kind of our operating rule. So for example, we have, from Sandy Run Middle School, we have our math teams that come in. They come in 2 or 3 times a year. They do come in for a full day. It gives them the opportunity to be together, to think together, to review where they are and where they need to still go. We just had the 8th grade math team in, and they were very thankful for the opportunity. One of the things that we know about our own education system is that internationally, American teachers have the fewest number of planning hours for classes. And so it's a very, very delicate balance to allow for time during the year that teachers can get together to think about the curriculum, and also making sure that they're present. So I agree with you. We try very, very hard not to have teachers come to our office, and we schedule it in a way that is least impactful. But what I would say is if there's a particular concern, I think it would be best to discuss it with Principal Hultquist, just to see what's going on. If there's anything we can do in terms of our own planning, we'd be happy to look at that.
Okay, there was another question regarding the Fort Washington Elementary School windows. Mr. Chmielewski, I look at you.
Yeah, that's one I would love to have had done two or 3 years ago. I think at this point, it's really important that we engage the community in the discussions we're now doing with regard to Sandy Run, because that could potentially be a large drain on our available resources, and it would also define how all projects fit together. I think that that the Fort Washington windows would be high on the priority list if we didn't have a looming project at Sandy Run. We need to find out where we're going with that as quickly as possible so that we know how to prioritize the rest of the projects throughout the district, including the windows at Fort Washington.
Okay, we are aware that the Dewey Engineering did identify that as an 8. I have the study up, and we look at the 8s and we see the progress that we're making with the 8s. So, and I know the windows are an 8, or is an 8. Windows is an 8. Okay, I attempted to get to everything. Mr. Sirota, you are my... Thank you, sir. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Did we really address the cost of the repairs in the annex versus the other buildings?
Cost of the repairs.
It may appear to be the least expensive project, but I think we need to look overall. If we do that and put all the money into the annex, and this is just me speaking, not the board, then I wonder where we would be with the main building, which also needs a lot of improvement. So I think it's a greater conversation than just deciding because that came in at the lowest number, we should go there first and therefore not talk about 6th grade. Great suggestion, but I think we need to look at the bigger picture because unfortunately both of the buildings are in need of work.
Okay, Ms. Bray, anything else?
Nothing additional.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, I'm turning to the agenda. Okay, we completed the community input, and we are now up to the announcements and communications. Ms. Bray, any announcements or communications?
No announcements tonight.
Nothing. Okay, we have some minutes.
We certainly do. Asking for approval of the January 11th legislative meeting minutes, as well as committee meeting minutes for December 17th Finance, December 21st Policy, and January 4th Education Committee.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Chmielewski made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Ludwig seconded the motion. Okay, any comments, questions, edits for any of those minutes listed in the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Education Committee report, recommendations. First up would be curriculum. Dr. Ludwig.
The Education Committee addressed all the motions that are on the agenda for tonight. There are 4. One is to approve a student activity. One is to approve a Sandy Run Middle School trip. One is to approve summer school, and the 4th one is to approve conferences. And I recommend that we approve them all.
Okay, motion is made. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Sirota. Okay, comments or questions on the curriculum section of the Education Committee? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to technology, Mr. Sirota.
One motion tonight, it is a new one, so I'll read the whole thing. I move to approve the purchase of 58 Chromebooks to support grades 2 to 4, Zern and Google Apps implementation in the amount of $19,807, funded through a donation from the Upper Dublin Education Foundation. And the background of this is, as Mr. Vinogradov has mentioned several times, we're looking to expand Google Apps further into grades 2 and 4, ultimately headed towards a 1-to-2 ratio. And this is a start, and we are greatly appreciative of the contribution from the foundation and, of course, all of its supporters.
Okay, motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Second by Mr. Kim. Comments or questions? Mr. V, very briefly for the community who missed the Education Committee meeting, the model that we're using in grades 2 through 4?
The pedagogical model or the physical device?
Yes. I think it's more important, the physical device. The question is, will the students be taking home? Is there a one-to-one Chromebook?
So the model that we're looking at for elementary is one where the devices stay at school through grades 4, that we don't buy more technology than we need, right? The goal is to remove the barrier to access that the teachers currently experience in wanting to use the tools that they use, but that we have devices that are appropriate and enough devices to appropriately use them in a way that meets the developmental needs of learners, right? So at the younger grades, that's very judicious and specific use. At all grades, it's judicious and specific use, but that it's easy for that teacher in 3rd grade who wants to, for example, use Zern to be able to say, I can use the Chromebooks that I have in a station rotation, and later when I want to do a larger research project, I only really have to collaborate with coordinate with my colleague across the hall, and we can flip-flop and make that happen. With respect to the hardware, we waited for a little while so that we could, in January, the new crop came out of devices, and I really was wanting to look at the flip devices with the touch screen. They're really nice, but they're not as rugged as I would want for early elementary, and the power consumption on the battery is not, robust through a whole day. These are very forgiving. The kids can use them for a couple of days without charging them. So we'll stick with the model that we have for now.
Okay, and just to clarify one more thing. Every 2 classrooms would have a set?
That's a goal for next year.
Right, that's the goal.
Is that every classroom in grades 2 through 4 will have a half set.
Correct.
Right? And that gives you the kind of flexibility you need where I don't have to, arrange for the cart down the hall, but that we have real ownership, and I really have to just coordinate with my grade level partner.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, I'd like to thank the Education Foundation for this donation, and I'm sure Ms. Good will talk a little bit later about the annual appeal. That really helps the foundation to fund initiatives such as this. So just a shout out, if you do get if you did get a letter from the annual appeal, or even if you did not, you can look at the website for the Education Foundation, and it's very helpful, and thank you to the Education Foundation. We had a first, Mr. Sirota, second by Mr. Kim. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor for the technology motion tonight, please say aye. 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 Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Student Services. Mr. Kim.
There are 2 motions. One is to approve service agreements. The second is to approve educational agreements. The first on this approving service agreements is to authorize approval of an independent contract with Therapy Source to provide LTS school psychologists to replace Donna Perone on FMLA at a cost not to exceed $47,000 for the remainder of the 2015-16 school year. The second is to authorize approval for an independent contractor to continue psychological services through January in the amount not to exceed $4,802.50. This is to replace Donna Perone, who is out on medical leave.
Okay, you can do the educational agreements too.
The educational agreements. Okay. Authorize approval of an educational services agreement between the district and the parents of a special education student for tuition in the amount of $36,000 for the 2015-16 school year. This is in lieu of a free and appropriate public education. The second is to authorize approval of an educational services agreement between the district and the parents of a special education student for tuition in the amount of $45,000 and legal fees in the amount up to $10,000, totaling $55,000 for the 2015-16 and 2016-17 school year. This is in lieu of a free and appropriate public education.
Okay, so on the student services, we have service agreements and educational agreements, 2 in each category. Mr. Kim made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Sirota seconded that. Thank you, sir. Comments or questions on the student services items tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to facilities. Mr. Chmielewski.
Okay, thank you. There are 5 motions before us, 2 of which are new. Those are numbers 1 and 3, and I'll read those first. The first one is recommended that the board approve the Upper Dublin Township's use of the district's indoor and outdoor facilities for their summer programs. Background: Upper Dublin Township summer programs.
Can you speak a little bit more into the microphone,
Okay.
Joe, please?
Upper Dublin Township summer programs have used the school district's indoor facilities in the past years. And then the third motion, which is also new, is recommended that the list of excess, obsolete, and repairable equipment be approved for disposal. I move approval on items number 1 and 3.
Second.
Okay, 1 through 3. And there was an additional attachment, Ms. Bray? Is this obsolete?
Yes, thank you very much for the prompt. In the board packet, there was a form that came in at the last minute, I believe, for Sandy Run Middle School, and I would like for you to consider that as part of tonight's agenda.
Okay. Okay, so motion was made by Mr. Chmielewski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Good. We are looking at the first 3 items under facilities.
It's numbers 1 and 3.
1 and 3. I'm sorry, Joe. 1 and 3. Okay, 1 and 3. Okay, only items 1 and 3. First and a second. No questions or comments. Motion to approve items 1 and 3. Please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
All right, and then the last 3 items were covered in the committee meeting. First one is number 2, recommended that the board approve the installation of a bike fix-it station by the Upper Dublin Township at Lock House parking lot. The next item is number 4. It's recommended that the board ratify a contract with S&H Landscaping Company in the amount of $13,244.56 for 2 change order requests. And that has to do with the installation of speed humps at Spark Drive, creation of one way in front of the Aplex, and a lot of other things too, but I won't read all those. And number 5, to approve, it's recommended that the board approve a contract to LPG Group Energy Consultants in the amount of $35,847 for the installation of power factor correction, harmonic filtration, and spike suppression devices. This is at the Upper Dublin High School.
Okay.
Move approval on those items.
Second.
Okay. Okay, so we're looking at 2, 4, 5, right?
Right.
2, 4, and 5. Okay, motion was made by Ms. Chmielewski, seconded by Ms. Good. Okay, any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? I'm sorry. Okay. Motion to approve those 3 items. Please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? I know you can't. Looking forward to the next section, Dr. Resnick.
No, I was just warming up. We're on page 5 and 6 with the Finance Committee report and recommendations. Take the first 2 together. The Treasurer's report recommending the board accept the food service financial report for December 2016, the General Fund January 2016 Treasurer's report, the Upper Dublin High School student activity accounts trial balance January 2016. And number 2, approving the voucher list as it appears before you.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Sirota. Any comments or questions on items 1 and 2? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Number 3 on page 5, it is recommended that the board approve the following Montgomery County Intermediate Unit budgets for 2016 to 2017. And you can see the comparison of the Upper Dublin share from 2015 to 2016 versus 2016 to 2017. The difference is kind of negligible.
Okay, it's a slight reduction, we should point out. Okay, you're doing that one by itself?
Yes.
Okay, item 3, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, who is that? Mr. Chmielewski, second the motion. Okay, which was made by Dr. Resnick. Any comments or questions on item 3? Okay, all those in favor of the IU budget, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so it should be duly noted that it was unanimous. We don't have to do a voice since it's since it was unanimous. So 9 in favor. Okay, moving on.
Number 4, accepting the Pennsylvania Department of the Auditor General's report. It is recommended that the board accept the Pennsylvania Department of the Auditor General's report for the years ended June 30, 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012, and in certain areas extending beyond August 9, 2013, with no findings, no observations, and no recommendations.
Second.
Okay, motion was made by Dr. Resnick, second by Mr. Sirota. Okay, item 4, the Auditor General's report. Any comments or questions? It's a bit old, but we never really knew it happened.
That is correct.
Okay.
I found it on the website.
Yes, and just congratulations to everyone involved with no findings, no observations, and no recommendations. Speaks highly of what the work that we're doing in all of our departments. Okay, all those in favor of item 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on.
Number 5 on page 6, it is recommended the board approve execution and submission of Plan Con K, project refinancing documents for the general obligation bonds, Series 2015.
Second.
Okay, was seconded by Mr. Sirota, I believe. Any comments or questions on item 5, Plan Con K? Wonderful process we have. Okay, seeing no comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 6.
Lastly, on page 6, number 6, the board has asked, it is recommended that the board direct the administration to notify Aramark that the current agreement will expire effective June 30, 2016, and it is the district's intent not to renew or extend the agreement. Subsequent to the approval of this recommendation, the administration will provide Aramark notice of the district's intent not to renew the management service agreement. The background on this is the district has contracted with Aramark Management Services LP and its predecessors in interest for facilities and technology management services since 1998. And basically, this was discussed in the Finance Committee meeting, and the administration has indicated that they feel they can better control the personnel needs and to meet the requirements at a satisfactory financial number.
Okay. Okay. Motion is made by Dr. Resnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sirota. Comments or questions on item number 6?
Yes, I have a comment. As chair of the facilities, I am in support of this motion. I'm in support of this motion. However, I do realize that this is a big step, and one that, of course, we don't take lightly, and it's also fraught with some challenges. What I'm proposing is to provide an amendment to the motion, and I'd like to offer that now. At the close of the written motion as is, I would add, the administration may engage in negotiation with Aramark with respect to the services provided by the facilities director. Any recommended action resulting from such negotiation would require future approval of the board. I offer that as an amendment to the motion.
Can you read it again? We don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, the motion, the amendment to the motion would be the administration may engage in negotiation with Aramark with respect to the services provided by the facilities director. Any recommended action resulting from such negotiation would require future approval of the board.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mr. Chmielewski. Would you be willing to make a separate motion? What you're recommending?
Yes, I would be willing to do that.
Okay, so let's first discuss and then vote on item 6, and then we can discuss the, which would actually be the 7th motion. Okay, any other comments or questions on item 6? It is the way it appears in the superintendent's report.
Was it seconded? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, Mr. Sirota did, yes. Okay, I don't see any other comments or questions. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, Mr. Chmielewski, let's come back to that.
Okay. Would you like me to read it again?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm not sure what we're asking. That's why I'm...
Okay. All right. The motion is, with respect to the Aramark, I didn't put a preface to this motion, so bear with me a little bit. With respect to the approved motion of the board regarding the Aramark contract that was approved February, whatever this is, 8, 2016, the following motion: the administration may engage in negotiation with Aramark with respect to the services provided by the facilities director. Any recommended action resulting from such negotiation would require future approval of the board.
Okay, motion is made. Is there a second? Okay, we have a second. Do you want to make any comments, Mr. Roos, on this?
I mean, it's fine to do this by motion if you want, but it's not necessary. I mean, you're simply saying to the administration, can you go negotiate with Aramark about these services? There's no board action required to authorize that sort of negotiation. It's just something that the administration, can just do without a formal board vote, but it's up to you.
The reasoning behind it is that we've just directed the administration to provide the intent of the board that we're not going to continue with the Aramark contract. So that would kind of close things. So this opens the window a little bit to allow them to negotiate on this one point.
So the one point would be just the facilities manager?
Yes.
Okay. Comments? Comments or questions, Mr. Sirota?
I feel like it would be helpful with regard to making this board action rather than just asking the administration to do it, to provide the reasoning why specifically the facilities director is the, why are you making the recommendation that we do this as board action?
I think it's a key position, and it's also February, and we're looking at summer projects. The administration may have an interest in engaging in some negotiations rather than or in conjunction with looking to the outside to fill the position. And so this gives them some flexibility moving forward to make sure that the services are provided and that there's no fall off in facilities management of the district.
Okay, I'm just wondering, Ms. Bray, do you know what the motion would involve, and does it mean that this individual would remain an employee of Aramark?
Well, I think we just have been discussing negotiating that. So
There's no specifics in the motion. It's just to provide the ability for the administration to engage in negotiation, and where that goes would be subject of those discussions.
Okay. Dr. Ludwig.
I think with the wording may, I mean, I guess I would say that I have enough confidence in our administration that they would look at the options, and if they thought we could not hire someone on our own, that they would make the recommendation that we look at Aramark again. And the fact that the wording is may, I really don't think we need this motion, and I will vote against it.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I would say that.
Wait, I'm sorry. Let me, Mr. Sirota was first. I'm sorry. That's my fault.
My instinct is to agree with Dr. Ludwig that if there isn't need for board action, if it doesn't result in any material difference to the process, I don't see the need to take the board action. So I'd probably vote against it as well.
Okay. I'm sorry, Dr. Resnick.
I was going to say, I would vote against the motion, but not against the not with the, the context of this not being considered by administration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Is the motion still on the table?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Can I just make a
Sure.
comment then? Because I don't think that the motion is necessary, that the administration would have the opportunity to participate in negotiations, whether we pass this motion or not.
At the moment, I count 4.
Okay. Well, let's vote. If after our comments are done, we'll see where it goes. Any other comments? Okay. Yeah. Let's do a roll call. Ms. Bray, do you have the list, or if you? I do. You do. Very good. Thank you. This is to approve the motion that Mr. Chmielewski has made and seconded by Ms. Rothman.
Mr. Chmielewski.
Yes.
Mrs. Good.
Yes.
Mrs. Hester.
No.
Dr. Ludwig.
No.
Reverend Kim.
No.
Mrs. Rothman. Yes. Dr. Resnick.
No.
Mr. Sirota.
No.
Dr. Levinowitz.
No. 6-3? No?
Motion fails 6-3.
Okay, but again, it doesn't mean it can't happen. Okay.
Thank you.
6-3. Okay.
Correct.
That concludes our finance report. Right? And nothing else, Dr. Resnick? Thank you, sir. Moving on to personnel. Ms. Good.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to take the entire Personnel Committee recommendations in one fell swoop. I'd like to make a motion we approve Personnel Committee recommendations on pages 6 through the top of page.
Thank you, Troop 542. Okay. Sorry, Ms. Good.
That's okay.
Salute.
Salute.
Salute. Thank you.
I don't know how to do a Boy Scout salute. Sorry. So that was my motion, pages 6 through top of page 10.
Okay, and that includes, we have a waiver this month?
We do not.
We do not. Okay. Okay.
Second.
Okay, first, and that includes the co-curricular activities. They're actually extracurricular. I know we had that discussion. Okay. So we have a motion to approve the entire personnel report and the extracurricular or co-curricular, extracurricular.
All of the above.
All of the above, okay. It was recommended by Ms. Good, I'm sorry, seconded by Ms. Hester. Okay, and no questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on from personnel to policy. Ms. Rothman.
Thank you. So we didn't have a policy meeting on January 25th because of the snow. But the motions that we have tonight are carried over from our last legislative meeting. The first motion that's on the list tonight is a second reading and adoption of policy 006. This policy had first reading at our last January meeting and obviously did not have any other changes. The second motion tonight is it's a second first reading of policies 815 and 815.6. Per procedure, if they were to be removed from the agenda, we would need to start over again with the first reading at our next meeting. They're not ready for second reading and adoption tonight because we need to work on the administrative regulations at our policy meeting. So we move those for first reading again.
Okay. Okay, we have a policy committee recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Kim, second that. Comments or questions on the two categories, the second reading and first reading? I hate saying the word second, but another first reading of two policies. Okay, any comments or questions? No comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, board. Moving on to other business recommendations, as I do not believe we have any tonight in that category. So it looks like we are now up to the liaison committee reports. The IU, Mr. Shimeleski.
Okay, thank you. Our MCIU meeting was on January 27th. At that meeting, we did get news that we have a grant regarding pre-K counts. This grant will allow us to deliver high-quality pre-kindergarten programs to 100 age-appropriate children at no cost to income-eligible families. The MCIU facility staff have been working with the MCIU Board Facilities Committee to reopen and repurpose the building at 1605 West Main Street in Norristown as an early learning academy, which will house 5 pre-K counts classrooms in February 2016. Our next facility, our next MCIU meeting will be February the 24th.
Okay, thank you. Legislative Committee, Ms. Hester.
I attended meetings, the meeting in January. The majority of the conversation, of course, was about the budget, and we're still at a budget impasse. There was also discussion about Keystone, the Keystone exams. And there was concern at that time because the legislature and the governor had not signed off on extending, but since that time it has been approved.
Okay, thank you.
Our next meeting will be next week.
Okay, Eastern Center for Arts and Technology will meet this Wednesday. I believe I already announced to the board and community that we have our third student of the month, Dana Nickens, who's in the commercial art program, will be joining us next month to be recognized and honored. Again, congratulations to all of our students. I don't remember any district having 3 student of the months in 1 year. So it speaks very highly of the type of student and the success that our students are having at Eastern. So we look forward to meeting Dana next month. EAC, Dr. Ludwig.
The EAC met on February 10th, and they have completed another report that had mostly been done last year. It is titled Alternative Revenue Sources, and I have distributed it to the board for review. The next meeting is Wednesday, March 2nd.
Okay, thank you. PTO, PTA, Mr. Kim.
On January 20th, the PTO Leadership Summit did happen. 4 board members attended. The next one is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, May 14th at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you, sir. Township, Mr. Shimeleski?
No report.
No report. Upper Dublin Education Foundation, Ms. Good?
Yes, thank you. I do have a couple of comments. One is I'd like to let everyone know in the community that the Upper Dublin Education Foundation is thrilled to be able to support technology among many other initiatives in this district. We exist to support the district and its initiatives. And this budget impasse has adversely affected us this year because the tax credit program has been stunted, and so we are unable to solicit donors in the way we used to be able to. So it is even more important for everyone to understand what Dr. Revenu had said about our annual appeal. It's very important to consider donating to us for the annual appeal. And also mark your calendars, February 20th is Monte Carlo night, and you may make a donation to come celebrate with the township and the foundation. It supports many, many foundations or nonprofits in and around the community, including Upper Dublin Education Foundation. And you can get information about Monte Carlo Night, February 20th, on our website. And we thank the community for all the support.
Just to add, Monte Carlo Night is a co-sponsored by the Upper Dublin Township, and half of the profits, donations that come in for the evening are split between the township charities and the foundation. So it does help support many, many charities that are in the district, in addition to the foundation. Mr. Roos, Solicitor's Report.
No, thank you.
Okay. We are up to our second community input. If you would like to come up, state your name, part of the township you reside in, and 4 minutes. Nita Brister, Fort Washington.
Thank you.
Okay. Saving you a few minutes.
Joe, regarding your explanation, it's fine, but when you give an explanation, sometimes it raises other questions. It is my understanding, and I think if you and I don't agree on this, we should probably try to get it ironed out next week at the task force meeting, that the elementary principals basically said the same thing at last month's meeting that they did 2 years ago, which was they said you could do a K-6 configuration in each of our elementary schools, but with ramifications. I didn't hear them say you can't do a K-6. They said you could do it. It obviously takes about 4, you would need about 4 more classrooms, 75 to 80 kids. But the ramifications would be the board would have to make decisions on what do you want to get rid of? Do you want to get rid of the IU? Do you want to get rid of reading support, math support? Or, as Joe suggested, do you want to build rooms? So I don't think we want to leave the impression that the principals said, oh no, can't do K-6, because here's the problem. K-3, the principals didn't say anything about K-3 because no one's asked them. But K-3 is a lot of kids. If you take K-3 and divide between 2 of our buildings, almost 600 kids, and what we're going to talk about next week, hopefully, is potentially additional kids that could come from development. So the board's going to have to think about, do you want to have 2 buildings with 600 little K-3ers? And then your other 2 buildings are going to be quite a bit smaller. So we're going to set up an inequity. And I talked about this before. You're going to have an inequity. You're going to have 2 very crowded buildings and 2 nicer, not so crowded buildings. But anyway, on to one other thing. The agenda for the agenda is clear for this month's task force. But the March one is where I find more confusion. Okay, the March one, we're going to talk about projected impact on staffing, projected impact on educational programming. April, we're going to projected financial impact, and on and on. I don't know what's the projected impact on what. So maybe the board could, have an executive session, whatever you need to do. Figure this out. In other words, what I see is there are potentially 3 scenarios that could work. A realignment, I'm not saying I'm in favor, but 3 scenarios that could work. I'm just saying capacity and enrollment-wise. Now, if you see more, fine, we'll get to that eventually. But I don't know how you're going to do projected impact on staffing, projected impact on financial, when we don't know what scenario we're talking about. Are we talking about K-6? Are we talking about splitting up neighborhood schools? Are we talking about maybe, this did come up at the first task force. I reviewed some of the minutes, thanks to Dr. Wheeler asking me if I could find my minutes. Since I did, I decided I better reread them from last time. Joe, you had mentioned the possibility of 3 schools of K-4 and 1 5-6. That might require building rooms too. But those are the 3 options. So we're going to need some clarification between February and March on projected impact of what? Projected impact, we know projected impact of keeping 6 where it is. You don't have to do anything major different. But if you're going to talk about a different grade alignment, which nobody seems to want, but if you want to talk about it, we're going to have some discussion as to which type. Because staffing, financial, whatever would be different depending on which type. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Did you flip a coin or?
Who's going first?
Okay.
Ginny Vitale again. Abe, I appreciate the curriculum, that your answer. But I just want just a little bit further. Just talking to Steph, it's not an issue per se about one particular teacher. And my point is actually the teachers are great. That's why they're getting pulled, which is awesome. I think the teachers need it. I think the education's great. I think the substitute, I guess, is where I'm worried. And how many max days? Is there a max days? So they already have, obviously, we have sick days, we have personal days, we have in-service days and half days, which we're not, the kids aren't there anyway. But I wonder how many more days are they allowed to be pulled out? And if it's not just curriculum, who else is pulling them out? And then how many days is that? If curriculum only has 3 days, but in these other places, how many days? What is the max? And I worry, like for one thing, the math, so a substitute may or may not know Eureka math. So then your kids may not have Eureka that day. And it's a pretty fast-paced program. So it isn't just my teacher, because I think those are good teachers. I want to make that clear, that I'm not complaining from that standpoint. So, and I think that was it. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no other community input, we'll close community input. Comments from the board regarding Ms. Bristow's questions on restructuring.
Okay, sure. I'd like to take some of that. I don't dispute anything you said. And basically it was my perception that what happened with the first task force was that the principals were more positive than they were in the second task force with regard to whether or not sixth grade would fit in the elementary school. It seemed, it was basically a matter of emphasis. They may have said the same thing, but it just seemed like the emphasis was a little bit different this time. I agree with you that when you have 7 grades and you're trying to split it by 2, the math doesn't work. So something creative would have to happen if you're going to keep the schools basically with the same kind of an enrollment. Would you be splitting 3rd grade? I don't know. I don't know what we would do. It's problematic, for sure. And I agree with you that in order for us to really identify what the impacts are, we have to know, okay, well, what kind of a scenario are we talking about? So we have a lot of work to do.
Okay. Anyone else on the restructuring?
Yeah.
Mr. Sirota.
I agree regarding the March meeting. I agree that's confusing. I think the source of the issue is that projected impact is probably not the term we should be using on the agenda. I think we should be. The point is of these meetings is to review the new information. So last time we reviewed enrollment. This next week we're going to review new development. The following week we're going to review the facilities study. That's really, in my opinion, what the agenda of that meeting is about. Then we will have reviewed all of the new information, and then can ask the question, as I said earlier. Then we can ask the question: has anybody's mind changed? The projected impact, based on whatever scenario it is we think we want to project, is part of that decision we can make after we see whether anyone's mind has changed. So I feel like any projected impacts have to be after March.
That's a good point. Thank you, Mrs. Sirota. Anyone else on that? Mr. Sigafus?
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Is?
can I, Mr. Sigafus, aren't professional development days, am I recollecting properly, aren't they called out in the collective bargaining agreement to some extent as to what, I don't know, I could be miscalling it, misrecollecting.
I'm sorry, did you say are they limited or defined?
Or defined and limited, yeah. Or,
no, they are not.
okay.
Well, I believe.
Mr. Sirota.
to answer, phrased that way, I think they are. There's a certain number of days, whole days, but that's not the same thing as pulling a teacher out for part of a day. I don't think we have a limit on the number of times a teacher can be pulled out for part of a day. Right.
Actually, if professional development is a full day of, say, curriculum writing, there is no limit on that either.
But there's a number
you're
of
right.
days
I
that
would
they
say
work.
the
There's a number
number
of days
of
that they work. That's what I'm
in-service
getting at.
days or professional development days in the context of the school year, those are defined in the contract.
Okay,
So
that's
yes,
more what I was
yeah.
getting along the lines of, okay.
Yeah, there are 183 student days and 6
That's what
established professional development days to make a total of 189. This year we have an additional one because of designating April 26th as an Act 80 day. So that will really be a student day, but we get to do professional development since it's the primary election for a president. Yeah.
And what about collaboration?
We get credit for it.
What about collaboration? Is there conversation in there about allowing a certain amount of time or?
No, there's no limitation or a specified period of time. We try to provide common planning time during their we call it their planning time or prep time, which is typically when at the elementary level the kids are with specialists, or at the secondary level they're teaching 5 or 6 classes. So the other periods that are non-teaching periods could be planning time or such.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Sirota?
So I think the answer to Mrs. Patel's question is there isn't a limit, but as I think I've said in other meetings, I think we ought to be looking at the number of times we of our own volition require subs. And I'm not saying there isn't value to all those things that we're doing, but it would be helpful to sort of look at it holistically, have an accounting of it, and prioritize those things and see whether there's an opportunity for improvement there.
Correct. It's also the day that you have the professional development. I would assume that if you have a day on a Friday before a holiday, it's going to be much more difficult to even get subs. So we're going to be scrambling for subs. So but I agree.
And if I could just comment, we actually, and I can only speak again, there are many reasons why teachers go out, and some of those reasons include either professional development or curriculum or opportunity for teachers to reflect. We always avoid Mondays and Fridays. That's terrible. So
Thank
that's
you.
right out. I would also say I think it's a very good question. I understand your question much better. So as a system, we should probably take a look at all of those days in a combined effect. And I know that Ms. Fredrickson in Mr. Sigafus's office is looking at capturing that data. It may take us a while, but to have specific reasons, very specific reasons why teachers are going out so we can take a look at that more carefully will be really, really helpful. And then the other thing I want to add is that Dr. Grazula did remind me in the area of science, there have been 4 days allotted throughout this year, just to be specific. However, we are, with the anticipation of teachers working this summer, we will have completed our elementary science work, which will alleviate some of the work that's going on. So again, we're very sensitive to it, and I agree we need to look at it as a system and get more feedback.
And in the process of looking at it as a system, let's remember that this isn't all about professional development, as others have said. There are other reasons, including things like IEP and JIEP meetings, and
Correct.
I don't know, I'm sure there's 17 other reasons.
Right. I would assume with science winding down, it could be ELA winding up. Okay.
A balanced approach
Yeah.
to giving teachers opportunity, I think, is a good one, but again, not at the expense of our students.
Correct. I agree.
Or teachers.
Okay, let's final comments from any board members. Anything else you'd like? Okay, final comments from our superintendent.
Yes, just a gentle reminder that on the website, in addition to tickets to Monte Carlo night, you can purchase tickets for music in our schools. The link is on the new website, so please be sure to do that.
Yep. Let's run home and check out the website if you haven't yet. We're very proud, and if you see anything wrong, don't email me.
Don't email me.
Email you. No, it looks great, and we do appreciate the effort and the time commitment that both Mr. V and I know Brooke worked, Ms. Evans worked very hard also with you working with her to get it up and running today.
I actually will jump in and correct myself.
Thank you.
Please do email me.
Yes.
Folks have reached out with kindness to their principal to point something out, right? Or they go to Ms. Evans. You know, at this nascent stage of the new website, please feel free, anybody in the community, email me directly. Because in the end, that message has to get to me.
Thank you.
So just jump right to me.
Does your email box get full, or do you have limited size for your email?
I always sit down when I look at it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Just a reminder that our next legislative meeting will be March 14th here in the Cardinal Room, and our committee meetings are listed in the agenda. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Sirota, seconded by Dr. Ludwig. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. See you at the committee meetings, I hope.